Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review for Shrinking Season 1, Episode 3. 15 minutes is the title for this episode because this is all the time you need to listen to music and bawl your eyes out. Now, I,
It's such a cool idea. I had never heard of that before. I mean, full disclosure, I am a former funeral director and I've taken a lot of grief classes to be able to prepare for that. But that wasn't something that they had taught us. So maybe it's just more of a therapist thing.
I will start this video with an admission. I have not necessarily done the exact 15 minutes as specified in this episode, but I listen to a lot of sad music.
Coldplay.
Coldplay's among them. You got your Coldplay.
Coldplay.
You've got you've got a little bit of Sufjan Stevens mixed there. You got some Callan Scott, like some sad romantic ballads. Like one time I listened to a full Adele album that I was at the end of it like on the verge of nearly sobbing. It's like, why do you have a song called "To Be Loved" that makes me feel like
Oh,
I'm just being crushed? But okay. Another fun story. I once listened to almost an entire album of that while playing Minecraft. It was the weirdest mixture of things I've ever felt. But
that is pretty weird.
yeah, I'm weird, everybody. But no, like it's an interesting idea in terms of how these characters sort of process grief, and it actually does feel like they all, in one way or another, kind of get something out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of really good stuff in this episode. I'm really enjoying this show, but I gotta tell you, this episode made me so frustrated with Jimmy. Like, as the episodes are going on, I'm getting more and more and more frustrated with him not giving himself to Alice the way that I want to see it happen. Like, Paul was my hero in this episode, but by the end of it, he was just like, what is wrong with you? Like, why can't you step up like this for Alice? You've stepped up like this in
Yeah.
other areas for other people. Like, what is wrong with you? I'm no longer talking to you.
Is this where we start caping for Harrison Ford and his lack of an
Oh,
Emmy
I am.
nomination?
Yeah.
Like, he's so good
Yeah,
in
he
this
is.
episode at telling off Jimmy. It is earned. There's a lot of
He
them.
said everything I wish I could say.
There's so much emotional stuff to dive into, and rest assured we will. Okay, so before we go any further here, be sure to join our Patreon. We've got a link for you guys below, and
Mhm.
over there every Tuesday night we do a live stream where we talk about TV. We'll certainly talk about Shrinking. We will answer a lot of your questions. These are really fun live discussions we've been having over there. We don't want you
Yeah.
guys to miss out. And of course, we're very, very grateful to everyone who has joined so far.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, let's
Yeah.
get into some of the Jimmy of it all. As
Yeah.
I mentioned, sort of at the beginning of this video, that he is really frustrating me so much. He's just, I can see how hurt he is, that he is, for this whole year that his wife has passed, he has not actually really faced his own grief. He's just been, drinking, drugs, women, anything to sort of numb the pain. Now it's
Yeah.
all coming to the surface. And that's fine. It comes when it comes. That's how
Yeah.
grief works, right? But he is starting to kind of reconnect with Brian, connect a bit better with Gaby. Like, he's doing all these things, and I'm just like, where's this same energy for Alice? Like, why isn't it there? And I know that there was that line at the beginning of this whole sort of thing where he was like, you look so much like her. And I kind of thought they were going to move forward more with that, and they haven't at this point. I mean, maybe that's what's holding him back. I mean, maybe he just feels really guilty as a dad. I mean, that's his kid, and he dropped the ball so hard on his kid that his neighbor had to step in and help.
I think Alice is going to be, I think, the hardest part of everything that Jimmy has to face in a way, because, you sort of alluded to it. He's let her down more than he's let anybody else down. And I
Yeah.
think that when you start to kind of crawl out of a hole, you crawl further and further out over time. And, there are challenges. There are spots where it gets steeper, more challenging. And I think that is going to be one of his bigger challenges to overcome, because he's going to have to face that, right? Like, there's a difference between cutting off your friend Brian, who, it's sad, and Brian was obviously very hurt, but
Mhm.
Brian's an adult. He's got other things going on. He can try to move past it a little bit easier than, say, your own daughter who you
Lives with you
yeah, lives with you, relies on
and is
you,
a kid.
and the only real seeming reason why you are not stepping up for her is because every time you look at her, you think about your dead wife and how hard that is for you.
Yeah, like this whole 15 minutes advice that she got from Paul to like just cry it out, listen to a
Yeah.
sad song, when the alarm goes off, you're done, that and you get back sort of to the real world. That moment that Jimmy came home and she was just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, I was just like, why aren't you just going in there? And why aren't you like, okay, let's talk about it. Like you're having this moment. Yes, you've explained to me what you're actually doing, but okay, I love you, just checking on you, and go to the kitchen to like, do something else. I was kind of like, this was the moment. I know later she was like, thanks for letting me do that and not sort of stepping in on that. But I think that that's something that, even if she said that, is something that she would have appreciated. Her dad just coming in and being like, let's cry it out together. Let's hug it out together. Let me do something. Because even that moment where he like tried to put his hand on her shoulder and she was just like, don't, that should tell Jimmy that he really needs to push himself further towards her.
I think what makes all of this so fascinating is just how emotionally insecure Jimmy is, where his life, life is hard. That's the real lesson at the course shrinking. But no,
Yeah.
really, this is a situation where he had put pause on his entire life for basically a year because it was easier to not think about it. It was easier to do all these other things. But
Then grieve.
I think in the process of doing all that, though, he has also made himself so afraid that like something is going to happen and he's just going to crack apart. And just from my vantage point, when he's seeing her crying, I can see the wheels sort of turning in his head where I think he must know on some level the right thing to do is exactly what you said, to go in there and be with her. I just wonder, is it a situation where he is just like, if she says no to me in this moment, if she doesn't want me there, if she screams at me or yells at me, like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be so hurt. And and that he puts his own fears over her, which is not the right way to be, but it really gets to the emotional core of who he is, and that's
Mhm.
why this show is so deep and so good and so interesting, where
Yeah.
we could be mad at Jimmy. It's okay to be mad at Jimmy. He's doing some things he's being a putz at times. He's doing some putsy things.
Yeah, because he is a dad and he has a kid who is underage, who's not an adult yet, but
Yeah.
she's had to step up in this sort of adult role and lean on other adults. And I wonder if part of the reason Jimmy didn't go into the room was also that he knows that he's dropped the ball as being the adult in this, that she's
Yeah.
also lost the same person, that they're both trying to grieve over and move past that. If he goes in there and he also breaks, then it's like, okay, well, then Alice may not be able to trust me that she can lean on me, which is not the case.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it too. I think there is so much going on in his head, and I think it's funny because even for a therapist, you still want to handle things that are easy sometimes. You want to be able to be like, okay, that's the right solution. That's how to handle this. And I think that's why he enjoys his like rogue missions with some of his patients and showing up at the dinner to tell off the guy who's been giving him a very false sort of state of events when it comes to his romantic encounters, because it's like, I got nothing invested in this. I don't really know this guy. I can go in
Yeah.
here and tell him right for wrong. I can leave. It's fine. Nothing's going to happen to me.
All right, talking about grief, let's talk about my girl Gabby. Man,
Oh
I
boy.
love her. She is
Yeah.
so funny. For me, she steals the show. The writing for her, the delivery from her, it is a 10 out of 10. She is so fun. She's so funny.
Yeah.
So, okay, she is also going through a period of grief right now.
Yeah.
She's revealed that she's getting a divorce. She's moved on kind of with somebody else. I mean, she hasn't really said how serious that is. I'm assuming probably not that serious, but we haven't gotten too deep into anything. What we do know is she is going through a divorce. She's like, oh, I'm going to throw this divorce party. Yay, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Again, sort of almost what Jimmy's been doing, where you're just kind of masking what's going on with like, oh, let's celebrate it instead of actually grieving the end of a marriage, which, good or bad marriage, you're grieving the end of something. It's a long relationship. So she's like, let's throw a party. Come on over. And then Jimmy shows up and she is a mess.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure what to expect when he showed up, because she is always kind of like fun, full of jokes, trying to be positive about stuff. This is sort of the first time that it's sort of pulled back the curtain, and here's like raw Gaby, where she's just like, I appreciate you being here, Jimmy, but the person I need to be here is Tia. So like, not only am I really grieving the loss of my marriage, I am really grieving the loss of my best friend. Like, I appreciate you, but no one can replace her. I need her so badly right now. And then they have this hug, and here's where my tinfoil hat is on.
All right.
So the last review, I had mentioned that I think that Jimmy and Gaby are going to hook up, that this is the love interest. And now I'm even more convinced, because with the talk of the two of them sort of talking about Tia and grieving over the same person, how important she was. I have seen this countless times throughout my career as a funeral director, of people who are grieving the same person and end up together, either in a relationship, or they hook up, or they're just finding comfort in each other over the person that they've lost in a physical way. It happens way more than you might think that it happens. And it makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Because Jimmy and Gaby both understand how they feel about losing her, where somebody else may not, and they won't, and they can't, because they didn't know her the way that they knew her. So seeing that together, and the hug, and that, we know that Jimmy is right now starting to grieve her. And now we've got this really raw moment from Gaby where she's really grieving her. That's when it always sparks. So I'm still on this train that this hookup is going to happen, and it's going to end up being difficult, because I've also seen that sort of fallout from it, of people falling out after they've had the hookup or whatever. Where it's like, oh, now we feel even more guilty. It's so bad. How could we do this to Tia?
As I have had full disclosure on all of these shrinking videos, I have already seen all of season 1, so I
don't know anything.
I will neither confirm nor deny your tinfoil hat theory about Gaby and Jimmy, but I will say,
no, it just feels like it.
I will say this: there's a lot of interesting, like, emotional currents between the two of them, and I think you're totally spot on with the fact that what they're going through grief-wise is very similar, and I think beyond just that, how they each handle the grief is a lot of ways really similar, because this episode puts a ton of context into, like, Gaby and the water bottle, and, like, Gaby and her music, and, like, I
love her.
I know, how can you not? Like, she's incredible, and she's just looking for distraction. She's looking for ways to make herself happy throughout the day.
Hey, that water bottle thing works.
Hey,
as I said in the first episode, I am the same. I also carry around the exact same color of water bottle that I drink every day. It works. Your skin will be dewy.
I guess this is why my skin is not dewy, everyone. I am sad to say.
It's so good for you.
I'm just hairy. But no, except for up here. No, so I think there's an emotional understanding between the two of them that's really, really interesting. And there's just inherent potential that it could get messy at any given moment, just because their personal lives are already messy. Now, I do want to throw a little bit of a shout out here to the underrated MVP that is Brian, because Brian's physical comedy skills in these couple of episodes he's been in, we did mention this in episode 2, but him throwing down the coat rack while he was closing the door was really funny. Him showing up with the balloons and Jimmy just trying to play him, just like trying to like push them all out of there was really, really funny. It's just, he's an interesting counterpoint, because he is like the exact opposite of them in a lot of ways, where he's so sunny and cheery and he doesn't have these things going on. And so it's great that this show is finding ways to give these characters different foils because it does sort of round them out more, and it makes the show, it is still a comedy. And I think, unlike some other shows we do here, The Bear, that are comedies
Mhm.
but aren't really comedies.
Not really.
No, like,
So good though.
oh, it's really
Yeah, if
good.
you're not watching The Bear, you should be watching Bear. It is good.
Yeah, well, like executive producer Bill Lawrence here, he's got a real history. Because if you guys watch Scrubs, like Scrubs can be a really funny show, and then you have the Brendan Fraser episodes, which turned me into dust, and I have never recovered. Like, but he's really good at being able to kind of balance out those two things, and Shrinking works really well in that department.
Yeah, this show, yes, there's lots of comedy. There's so much has made me laugh out loud. That coat rack thing with Brian, I just about
Yeah,
died. But it is so spot on when it comes to a lot of mental health issues, grief. Like a lot of this is really sort of coming out, and seeing even Alice at this young age dealing with her survivor's guilt. Her friend is like, gets her to laugh and takes this picture of her laughing, where she starts to feel guilty of like, oh my goodness, like this isn't okay. Is this okay? I don't feel good about it. Like, why should I be laughing? My mom passed away. Oh, but it's been a year. Like, it's things that many shows never ever talk about. And I think that's one of the things that makes Shrinking as unique as it is. And I do hope that it picks up even more and more audience
yeah.
next season, because it's talking about things that nobody talks about. It really is sort of a like, put on a smile and move forward with things and not talk about it.
Yeah, and it's true for so many different characters, and I think that's what makes all of this so interesting, is that we have somebody like Paul who is so settled in, what his life is,
Yep.
what he's done.
Yep.
He has so much pride, like even if it's a little thing, like he prides himself on being able to get to work. He still technically can do it, but every time he does it, it feels like he's about to kill somebody. So he has to sort of actually look at himself in the mirror and be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting reveal to see that he's at the very beginning of Parkinson's, and that while he still can
Yeah,
technically drive, and he's passed the test and he passed it more than once, that he wants to do things on his own terms. And, while he did crash into Gabby and
yeah,
almost ran over Jimmy, he makes the decision that even though it says he's okay, he doesn't feel like it's okay. And seeing him in Gabby's car in the morning was really funny.
it was really like her response
I
to it.
know, being like, don't just get into people's cars.
No, that was really, really good. That's funny. This episode really had both really funny stuff at the start and at the end, because we had that
Yeah.
with Paul at the end.
Okay, here's the thing about Jimmy that also really frustrated me in
Yeah,
this episode. So he's very much like, Liz, stop stepping on my toes.
yeah,
Don't help out Alice as much as you are. Sort of, how dare you? You've crossed the line. Which, as I said in the last review, I do not agree with. I
yeah,
think that children can have lots of adult, good figures, mentors, parents, whatever, to help you through stuff, especially with something like losing a parent. But then we have this situation where Jimmy figures out that Paul has been helping Alice with the 15-minute thing. And they get into this fight on the phone where Jimmy's like, and don't think I don't know about this 15-minute thing. And I just want to say thank you. I'm like, get out of here. Like, you should also be thanking Liz. Liz was there to make sure that your kid got to school every day, got fed all the time, like picked her up, was there for her soccer games, was there to even be there when things were starting to go bad at school, where she was talking to the counselor. Like, that's the thank you that needs to go out as well.
Jimmy is such a hypocrite. Like that's a part and ironically, like that's a part of what makes him interesting as a character, is that he's willing, and I don't know if this is just like elitism because Paul is a therapist and like, he's quote unquote qualified to have these conversations, but it is like, here he is acknowledging his colleague when he won't acknowledge Liz. Is it because Liz is more involved in like the day-to-day personal stuff that he feels like he should be taking on? It's hard to say, but it is hypocritical. And I think Siegel likes playing these kind of characters. Like I think he doesn't necessarily want to be Captain America or like the I'm likable all the time. The Jimmy is very, very flawed. He is somebody who you want to tell off a lot.
I hope that Liz gets her flowers for stepping up and being there for Alice as much as she was, because if Liz wasn't there, I don't know where Alice would be. You know, she lost her mom, her dad checked out, her godmother's Gaby, where Liz was like, well, where were you? Like, you're not around either. She was alone. There was no adults around to help her. If Liz wasn't there, I don't know where she ends up.
One more important note on this episode, we have cornhole entering now the overall pantheon of unathletic sports that are being shown off on Shrinking by these, fairly wealthy people who don't have any actual athletic skill. What is going to be next? Is it croquet? Are we going
I
to
love croquet.
Yeah, it's gonna some other athletic event that us two who are very unathletic people could also participate in.
You're all right.
I can block shots and I could shoot threes like 10 years ago.
I can walk up and down my stairs. That's about all I've got going on. I am not an athlete in any way. Cornholes just seems like too much work for me. I have to go outside.
Throw the beanbag. Okay, well, we'll find an indoor cornhole for you to play.
It's called Minecraft. There's been an update.
Okay. I've just learned something new, everybody. But okay. Well, with that, we're going to go play Minecraft. No, but thank you guys so much for watching our Shrinking coverage. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all of our patrons. We'll see you here next time.